Is Tolu. I'm a Christian dating coach and I specialize in showing single Christian women how to go from single to married in 1 year. So if you want to work with me one-on-one on going from single to married in a year, you can apply to work with me with the link in my bio and first tab. Or if you're watching this live, you can click the pinned link and I'll review your application. If you're the right fit, we'll hop on a call. I'll give you the simple strategy I use to help my clients go from single to married, and we'll get started in my program. Now, in my one-on-one coaching program, Dating to Marry, we work together for 6 months to make sure that you get married in a year. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about if you always find yourself being a girlfriend, you get into relationships, but it just never goes anywhere. This also qualifies if you find that you are always a fiance, but it never leads to an actual marriage. So the reason I chose this topic is if you're in this space of being a girlfriend, being in relationships, but it never leads to marriage, then you really need to reevaluate the kind of relationships you're entering, the way you are choosing the men that you're committing to, and how you're showing up in the dating scene to attract those kinds of patterns. If you've experienced this more than once, it is a pattern. If you find that you are always in the middle of a relationship that feels like a situationship, this also applies to you, okay? So, a couple of things I wanted to mention. And if you've experienced this, just drop me in the comments if you're watching this live, and drop your questions as well in the question box if you're watching this live. So, why this is happening is a couple of reasons. Now, it could be more than one of these things I mentioned, but I'm just going to get into it. Firstly, you're dating men that don't want to marry you. Okay, so you really want to understand that when you are getting into relationships and going on dates, you want to determine as quickly as possible if that man likes you the way you desire to be liked. So what I mean by that is he's not just interested in you sexually. He's not just interested in what you can do for him financially. He's not just with you because it's convenient. Because he can get into a relationship with you for all those reasons. You want to make sure that you're dating men that actually are interested in stepping into a commitment that leads to marriage. You want to make sure that you're dating men that actually are interested in committing to you as a husband. So they are dating to carry that, they are dating to see if you can carry that, what I say, partnership with them moving forward, okay? It's important for you to understand that when you are dating to marry, you should also be dating men that want to get married. Not every man wants to get married, and not every man is straightforward with that. So you have to get really good at paying attention to when a man is actually interested in a long-term relationship that involves marital commitment in the way you understand it. So what I mean by that is a godly marriage. What I mean by that is marriage that has certain responsibilities on the man, maybe financial responsibilities or however, whatever dynamic works for you. You really want to use that to inform the way you date. Because if you're dating a man that doesn't believe in being a provider or doesn't believe in bearing financial responsibilities, but he does believe in marriage, that's not going to be the kind of marriage you want. And your relationship will probably not lead in that direction. Because if you want a man to be a provider, you obviously want to see signs of that before you commit to him maritally. And I say obvious because I expect you to know that, okay? So if you didn't know, you're welcome. So you want to make sure that you're dating men that do want to get married and do want to marry you. And when you're dating, if you're noticing that the men that you're with always just want to be your boyfriend, but never want to commit long term, these are some of the things that will crop up in the dating process. It would have been obvious maybe in a conversation you had when you guys were just talking, or through the process of going on dates, or even in the early stages of the relationship, but it shouldn't be something that surprises you. Now, I've been doing this work for a long time, and the amount of women that I've spoken to that found themselves in this situation, it was never a surprise. It was more a disappointment because you were focusing on hoping that he would change. You were explaining away, giving excuses as to, and we'll deal with that in a second in a different capacity, but you were giving excuses as to why he is definitely the kind of man that can give you what you want, when in reality he isn't, and he has shown you these things. Now, what I like to do with my clients is to make sure that they are dating with data and discernment. So when I say data, I mean we're dating based on facts. We're not dating with assumptions, because assumptions only lead to more problems for you down the line in the relationship. Okay, so for example, one of my clients, she was dealing with men that always wanted certain favors from her. We're looking for commitment in terms of, pregnancy before marriage, or looking for commitment in terms of just certain assurances like pregnancy before marriage. The problem there was that was a clear red flag. However, she was genuinely considering it. Why? Because of all the factors that she has experienced in the dating scene, and I'm using her as an example because I want you to understand that I get where you're coming from, but it's still not enough of a reason. You're probably just dating the wrong way, and you're dating the wrong man. Definitely. Okay. So she came to me because she was dealing with that particular situation. That's the closest she had come to any form of commitment. So I had to show her how to actually date in a way that will align with the marriage she actually wants, because you want to date men that want to marry you and want to step into the marriage you desire. You don't want to be dating men that require pregnancy before marriage, or require you to move in before marriage, and so on and so forth. If you're dating in a biblical way, you obviously want to date men that will get married to you first, and then the pregnancy comes, and then the moving in comes, for example. So when she came to me and we started working together, I had to change the entire way in which she was considering her options of men. Now she's happily married, and she married a man that didn't have all those requirements attached to his desire for her to be his wife. And that's the truth. When you're dating a man that wants to marry you, he will align with your values, and where he doesn't align, he will adjust. You are not meant to be the one adjusting. You're not meant to be the one doing the realignment. You are literally meant to be the one that holds the standard in place, so that you're attracting a man that matches that standard. Okay, so with her, once we changed the entire way in which she was considering men that were approaching her, and I showed her how to actually consider men that were eligible, she met her husband a few months later, and now she's married. Now, there's no way she could have kept dating the way she was doing before and attracted the man that eventually became her husband. The reason I mentioned that to you is the man that you are dating, the men that you're dating that are constantly giving you the title of girlfriend, are not going to give you the title of wife. So you want to date men that actually align with the kind of marriage you want, and are in alignment with desiring to marry you, so that you can marry and attract and date your husband. Okay, so if you're not experiencing this and you're always in relationships but never a wife, it is because you're dating men that don't want to marry you and do not align with your values. Another thing I've seen is you're jumping into relationships too prematurely. My recommended timeline is 90 days. I work with my clients from the start to, if they meet a man today, if he's in their life in 3 months, that's their boyfriend. So my clients usually get in relationships with men that eventually become their husbands within a 90-day timeline. Because when you are dating to marry, and you're dating men that desire to marry you, they don't waste time. That 90-day timeline is to be able to see how both of you actually align in practice and in principle. Okay, so how do you actually align? When you say that you have Christian values, how does that translate into your relationship? How does your communication style translate? Is there actual attraction here, or is it just a figment of your imagination? Is there consistency here or not? Are we both clear on what we want, and does that translate into the way in which we communicate and we connect as a couple? That's why the 90-day timeline is there, and that's why I recommend my clients get into relationships in a 90-day timeline. If they do it prematurely, there's also a problem of you guys getting into relationships too quickly, and what you don't understand is you need to allow that connection to marinate. In other words, you need to give it time to be able to mature enough for you to actually see what day-to-day talking to that person looks like. Another issue I see is you're getting into relationships with men that are not even consistent. By the way, men talking to you every day is normal. Men wanting to see you every week, every other week should be part of the process of showing that they are interested. Men wanting to take you on dates and bearing full financial responsibility for that expense should be normal, okay? None of these things are strange. So if you're committing to men that don't do any of these things, that right there is your problem, because you're committing to men that are not willing to pursue you appropriately and that are not willing to give their time and invest their effort in showing you they are genuinely interested. I don't care if he tells you that he wants to get married, he's a God-fearing man. I don't even care if he's spirit-filled, serves in the church, but is not being intentional with you, being consistent and being committed. That is not your husband. There are some things you need to realize, that regardless of whether or not he's a Christian or not, if that man is interested, he will do, okay? So this is part of the work that I do with my clients. I remember one of my clients, she was constantly dealing with men that were on 50-50. Now, I personally do not subscribe to that. I mean, everyone's to their own. But she was dealing with men that were on a 50-50 kind of vibe. And she came to me, because she was experiencing men that would enter relationships with her, but that 50-50 was playing out not only financially, in other areas, in terms of effort, in terms of interest, in terms of intention. And that's the thing. That's something you have to realize. What you're experiencing in one area with that man will replicate in other areas. So when we started working together, one-on-one, one of the first things I did was change the way she was creating availability for men to pursue her. In other words, we're not doing 50-50. We're not negotiating how a man should pursue. And once we made that adjustment, she noticed that men were actually coming to her being very intentional. She went for a date for the first time where a man fully paid, did not even let her to offer to pay, took her to where she wanted to. She had a great time. And, another client, same thing, she went for an amazing date. In fact, in the same day with the same guy that was willing to meet her exactly where she was and match, the level of desire she required for him to get her attention. And that, the reason I mention these clients is to show you, before you meet your husband, you have to have certain standards. So that's part of the work I do with my clients. And with these women, for example, that I'm currently working with, that is one of the first things we do in my program. Like literally one of the first things you do once we step into my one-on-one container is change the way you create desire for men to pursue, not only in terms of them showing you interest, but in terms of them showing you intention consistently. So, in doing these for my clients, that's how they actually attract their husbands. Because I can tell you for free, your husband is going to be intentional. He's going to be pursuing you with a clear intent, and he's going to show you consistency. That is non-negotiable, okay? I can tell you for free, your husband will do that. So because I'm showing these women, I'm coaching them through the process of dating to actually get married, those are some of the fundamental things that need to be in place first, even before you meet the man, so that you are starting to naturally create opportunity for only the kind of man you can marry. Reason I mentioned that to you here is some of you are committing to men that don't do any of these things, and this is literally the baseline. This is basics. This is nothing. Any man that wants to get your attention, time, and effort should be doing all these things. He should be showing up consistently. He should want to take you out. He should want to provide, she want to provide comfort for you. He should want to align with your interest. It's just natural. That's how men show that they are interested. But the problem I see is you're entering relationships with men that are giving you half-assed efforts, for lack of a better way of putting it. They're not putting the intention. They're very lazy in their approach. They're not consistent. You are now the one trying to ginger them. And ginger, if you're not Nigerian, means you're trying to encourage them. You're trying to inspire them. You're trying to coach them. That's what ginger. That's my best translation of ginger. You're the one trying to push them to be able to take you seriously. And I've seen this as well in some cases. Don't assume because he's a Christian man, oh, he loves the Lord, so let me just accommodate him. That is still not your husband, because regardless, one of the requirements for your husband is he will pursue with intention and he will be consistent. He does not need encouragement. He doesn't need you to coach him. It will be a natural desire for him. In fact, it's part of how you know this is the man for you. It's part of the ways God will show you that is your husband, okay? So when you are getting into relationships just because he said, can you be my girlfriend, you are shooting yourself in the foot. because that is not your husband, right? So if you are entertaining those kinds of men, jumping into relationship, and just because he took you out once, because some of you are not used to this, and this is part of the work I do with my clients in getting them used to being flown out for dates, taking on luxury dating experiences, having men buy them gifts, having men, give them attention and time, having men volunteer to assist them in any difficulty they find themselves in. It's part of the work I do with my clients in creating an opportunity to attract that kind of men and showing them how to navigate connecting with that kind of men, especially when they're not used to it. You don't want to now jump into commitment because he did it one time. And again, that's another error I see women do. Because he took me on this amazing date one time, yes, I can be his girlfriend. It doesn't work like that. It has to be consistent before you commit. So if you're always a girlfriend and never a wife, you're not creating enough runway for that man to show you consistency so that he is intentionally invested in committing to you. And if you don't do this, you will discover that you will attract men that immediately you agree to be their girlfriend, they become very lazy, relaxed, laid back. They don't put in an intention. They don't put in effort. It feels like you're the one dragging the relationship along. They're not doing anything for you. They're not showing you any interest in actually being a couple. It's very hard for you to get them on the phone. Basically, the problems you saw before will just magnify, okay? Because again, you're not dating men that want to marry you, and you're not dating men that are interested in committing to you as an actual partner. Okay, they just gave that title because it was easy. And that's another thing. You really need to understand how men think, which is part of the work I do with my clients. I literally work with you on understanding, okay, what does he mean when he says this? How can you approach this particular conversation? What are you getting from this particular experiences you've had with him? I work with my clients on doing that so that they understand exactly how to communicate with men in a way that allows them to discern and vet. Vetting basically means qualify, that they are talking to men that are actually in a position to be their lifetime partners, right? Because sometimes, going to the spiritual angle a bit, sometimes when God doesn't approve, it's not going to come through a dream. It's not going to come through scripture. It's literally just going to come through an example. Okay, it could be as simple as that man doesn't call you consistently. That's God's answer to your prayer. He won't, give you one vision somewhere. It could be that simple. But because you don't know, you don't understand the way men operate and the way men think, you miss it and you waste your own time. When I say you waste your own time, you by yourself stay in that relationship / situationship, because that's actually what it is. Because that man is not going to marry you, but he's also preventing you from actually meeting and marrying your husband and dating your husband. You shoot yourself in the foot. But when you understand how men think, you will understand exactly why he says what he says, why he does what he does, and how he shows up to you and what it means. Okay. You have to understand that some men have no problem being a boyfriend. They don't. Even whether you met him in church or outside the church, it doesn't matter. They don't have a problem being your boyfriend, but they do have an issue with becoming your husband. Okay, now why don't they have a problem being your boyfriend? Because it comes with certain benefits. It may be convenient, it may be comfortable. With men, it can literally be a situation where they see it as a benefit. The other day, I was hanging out with a couple of friends, some of my male friends, and we're having a conversation. One of them had the flu. Because it's really cold right now. One of them had the flu, and he was like sniffling, and my other friend said, oh, what are you doing about that flu? He's like, oh, he's really sick, he's trying out some remedies. And my other friend goes, why don't you just get a girlfriend? Now, naturally, because I was there, of course I am. In fact, I think it triggered me a bit. I think it brought up the feminist in me a bit, but we went into a whole thing about that. Reason I'm bringing it up is my friend literally said to the other person, why don't you just get a girlfriend? That was his solution for his cold. Like, in other words, if you have a girlfriend, she'll take care of you. She'll be able to cook when you can't cook, bring over some meal for you, and so on and so forth. Guys, do you see what I'm saying? That was his solution to that problem. Now, of course, we went on and on about it. We went into different things, different debates. The reason I mentioned that here is literally that is how he processed my friend's sickness. And that is to show, these are men, okay? So that's to show you that you know, when a guy is looking at you, he's also looking at what he can tangibly see as a benefit. So if just because he says, can you be my girlfriend, you know, let's be in a relationship, doesn't mean he sees you as a potential wife. It could literally just be you're making his life easier. And I'm sure you've experienced this, you know, and I say that so confidently because I've done this work for a long time and I've spoken to hundreds, if not thousands of you. I'm sure you have at least 1 to 2 experiences, whether yourself or someone else, where you've been in a relationship and it just felt like you were basically a nanny or a maid or a cook, a chef, in fact, a cleaner, all the things. You were or, you know, personal assistant. You were doing all the things for that man. You were his girlfriend, but you were doing all the things. Now, if I ask you how many things that man did for you, I'm sure you won't be able to mention up to 3 things that were tangible and consistent when you're reflecting. You won't be able to mention it. Because guess what? He never intended to marry you. It was just a question of convenience, comfort, and your availability. So just because he says, and the thing with women is you think being a girlfriend is a stepping stone to marriage. So you enter like a relationship thinking, oh, you know, this is potentially my husband. He asked me out, so he must see me as a wife. No, men and women process information very differently. You're thinking, oh, he sees me long term. He's thinking, well, she's here. It's comfortable. It's convenient. Why not? That's literally the extent of his thoughts. He's not even thinking about you as his wife down the aisle or whatever. So you want to understand the way men process information so that when you are dating with clarity. You are not blinded. You are dating with actual understanding. You know, and this is part of the work I do with my clients in helping them to understand. Literally, when we work together, you know, apart from weekly coaching calls that you have with me, I also offer WhatsApp support. So I'm chatting with my clients literally on a daily basis. In fact, one of my clients told me the other day, when she sees my name, she already knows that it comes with, she's already having like, what would I call? She's already thinking, have I done the last assignment and so on. So basically, I'm in your business. So I was chatting with my clients the other day about this, that you really want to understand the way men think. You know, I really walk them through the process of, let's analyze that conversation. Why do you think he said this? What do you think it meant? So that they can also learn what it looks like when they're processing. And this is a skill that will apply, you know, for my clients that are married and engaged. It has been helpful in helping them in their relationships, because when you are dating your husband, you really want to understand why he says certain things. You want to understand why he does certain things. You want to understand why your husband, you know, is approaching an issue in a particular way. Because if you don't have that understanding, you may create a problem when really it's just a lack of understanding. So understanding how men think is valuable for your relationship, and it's valuable when you get married as well. But yeah, part of the reason why you're always a girlfriend and never a wife is you just don't process information the way men do. So it's difficult for you to understand what he's actually trying to communicate as opposed to what you believe he's saying. You really want to get good at that. Another reason is you are vetting wrongly. And let me know if this is helpful. Just tap the hearts. If you have any questions for me, drop it in the question box. Another reason why you're always a girlfriend and never a wife is you are vetting wrongly. When I say vetting, I simply mean that you are looking at information and deciding on what the information, you're processing information the wrong way. Vetting just means checking. You know, for example, before a flight takes off, there are certain procedures that they do. You know, they'll ask you to, you know, fasten your seatbelt. They'll walk you through the safety protocol. If you're sat by the exits, they will walk you through some safety in case of an emergency. That is vetting. They're going through a checkbox. They are going through protocol. Before you got that job, you know, there were certain documents you had to sign. You know, maybe you are hired on probation. That is protocol as well. There are certain things they're looking out for before they give you the full benefit of the role and so on and so forth. That is vetting. It's like a checklist just to make sure that you meet the basic requirements to be able to fulfill that obligation, whether it's being on a flight or, you know, starting a new job or whatever. Now, when it comes to dating, vetting is asking the right questions and knowing what the right answers are. I've discovered that part of the reason why you are always a girlfriend and never a wife is you are asking the wrong questions, or you don't know how to qualify your answers correctly. So, for example, you're asking a man, you know, when do you want to get married? And he's telling you, oh, I want to get married this year. And then you're assuming that means that he will marry you if he gets into a relationship with you this year, when it may actually just mean that he just wants to get married within the year because that because maybe it's the start of the year, or maybe because, based on his last relationship, he decided that he actually wants to settle down. It has nothing to do with you. But you are processing that information to mean that, oh, because he's talking to you, he wants to marry you or whatever. So it's usually the little errors that I see women make that create the biggest problems. So maybe you get into a relationship with that guy now, but you are forgetting to take into account, okay, what's his situation? Is he financially stable enough? Do we share the same values? Have I gotten to know him long enough? That is what will inform you to get the right answer. But because you're not putting, all you heard was, I want to get married this year, so you're already running. In other words, you're already excited, you're already planning, you're like, oh, finally, God has done it. Nothing has happened, by the way. But that is you processing the information the wrong way. And some of you, those are the kinds of men you're dating, okay? Those are the kinds of men you're dating. You are failing to really process the information they are giving. Or sometimes you don't even ask the right questions. Asking him, when do you want to get married, is very different from asking him, what do you think about, what do you think about marriage? Those are two completely different questions, and they will give very different answers, but you need to know how to process what you're being told. Okay, so that's part of the skill of dating. That's part of the skill of data gathering. When I say dating is about gathering data, it's not just information, it's how you use the information, it's the kind of questions you're asking. And sometimes you may not even need to ask, you just need to observe, which is another skill I show my clients how to do, so that they are able to really make a holistic decision on the men that they give their time and attention to, and they are less likely to get disappointed. That's how, when I say my clients go from single to married in a year, it's not like it's not just because, it's because they go through a very intentional process of learning how to be visible, firstly, because if that man can't see you, he can't marry you. Learning how to be visible to the kind of men that actually they are interested in and are interested in them. Learning how to connect with men in a substantial way, and qualifying the kind of man they commit to, so that inevitably they will get married with the relationship they enter into. So that's how it happens in a year. So if you're finding that you're getting stuck on the girlfriend wagon, or you're getting stuck in being engaged and never getting committed to maritally, and if you're on the engagement wagon, a couple of reasons for that could be you got engaged to the wrong person, you failed to listen to what God told you, because God will never change his no to a yes if that is not the man for you. So if he's been telling you a vehement no, I guarantee you've been hearing it prior to the breakup of that engagement. Or you pressured that man into being engaged with you. You've probably spent a phenomenal amount of years with that person, and it just seemed like the most natural next step. By the way, men don't need all that time. My clients literally go from single to married in a year. They usually get engaged within the first 6 to 8 months of knowing the gentleman that they are dating. And then they've been married. I've been doing this for so long. I've had clients that have been married for over 3 years, over 5 years at this rate. So it's not like they're marrying men just for the sake of marrying. They're actually marrying men that want to marry them. They don't need that long, right? So if you're finding yourself in engagements that don't last, that's another potential reason you're committing. You spent so long with a guy, you just figured, let's get married, or he just figured next step is marriage, which is never the reason to get married, by the way. A man should genuinely be excited to make you his wife. Should genuinely be excited to take the next step with you. And when he's excited, he doesn't like to waste time, right? He doesn't like to waste time. Now, another thing is you're dating with desperation. So when I say you're dating with desperation, I want to be clear. Desperation looks very different. I'm not saying that you are desperate in terms of, oh, I want to get married tomorrow. No, it's more to do with your emotional state. You are probably dealing with a lot of anxiety, frustration, exhaustion. You're probably trying to hurry conversations with men. You're probably trying to block men from getting to know you better because you're afraid that it will lead to another disappointment. You're probably struggling with rejection. Maybe you're coming out of a divorce or a broken engagement. You're dealing with rejection in some way, shape, or form. The problem is now it affects the way you communicate. You become an interrogator, you become a detective in the dating process, which is very unattractive to masculine men that want to provide and pursue, because you're projecting your insecurities on them. That's what dating with desperation looks like. It looks like insecurity, anxiety, fear, frustration, exhaustion. It looks like impatience. And what happens is you will attract emotionally unavailable men. So because you are emotionally unavailable yourself. So when you're dating with desperation, you're not ready. You're not available for a healthy relationship, because you can't have a healthy connection with a man from a place of fear, anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion. It just can't happen. And any healthy man will not be attracted to that. So you will attract unhealthy men. You would attract men that know how to say the right things, that tick the boxes on the surface level, but when you get to the substance of the man, there's nothing inside. It's like an empty container. You will find that you struggle a lot with communication issues. And when I say communication issues, it means that you are both always in conflict. It feels like there's always arguments. You will find that you would attract men that know how to say the right things but don't necessarily follow through. And that in itself is a signal that he is aware that this is what you're looking for, but he's just not willing to do it. It's not like he doesn't know, because he knows exactly what to say. He just doesn't want to do it. So in other words, he knows what to say to get you to do what he wants. Okay, so when you're dating with desperation, that's what will happen. So how I remedy this in coaching is to make sure that we deal, firstly, one of the main areas in one-on-one coaching with me that we deal with is your dating history and experiences, so that I can help you clean up and remove any areas that are going to inevitably repel quality men. And when we work through that in coaching, you naturally see a healthy improvement in the kind and quality of men you attract. Mind you, when you're dating with desperation, you won't have a problem getting into a relationship, but you will have an issue getting married. You will, and even if you do get married, in the small chance that happens, it probably won't last. It won't last. Some of you, if you've gone through a divorce, some of you, or maybe not, you've just been in a long-term relationship, you will notice that there was an element of desperation involved. Whether you were desperate to get married, so you ignored the signs, or you were desperate to become a Mrs., you were desperate to, start having kids, so you are just managing. Speaking of, my next point is settling. Okay. Now, when you're always a girlfriend and never a wife, you're settling in some capacity. There's a standard God has given you that you're refusing to set as a bar. Okay, so whatever that may be, I don't know. It could be the fact that maybe you desire somebody that has a certain financial capacity. You're settling for that. Maybe you're not attracted to men of a particular complexion or height. Maybe you like men that are, 5'11" plus or whatever. You're settling for less than that. Maybe you like somebody that is a provider, is not into 50-50, wants to take the main part in the relationship financially, but you are settling for men that can't even pay the bills, always ask you for money, never financially stable. You're settling. You're giving excuses, and usually when this is coming up is you'll find that you're always explaining yourself. To yourself, by the way, not necessarily to friends and family. You're always explaining like, maybe he just needs more time. You can't have everything. Let me just manage, maybe I will get to like him eventually. Meanwhile, the truth is none of those things are going to happen. But those are your excuses as to how to remain, because you're not comfortable, by the way. It's a running thought. You would have that for as long as you stay with that person. Those thoughts will be there. They're not going anywhere. But you are using these excuses to kind of as a buffer, to kind of manage the situation. And what's going to happen is at the end of the day, that relationship won't work. And even if it does work, it wouldn't produce the kind of marriage you want. I've spoken to a lot of women in the course of my coaching work, and I can tell you very confidently, there are some marriages that should not have happened. There are some marriages that are not based on God calling two people to come together. There are some marriages where there is no attraction. The woman is not attracted to the man. She's not interested. There are some marriages that have been going on for years, and neither of the people, or rather the women in those, because I work primarily with women, the women in those marriages are not happy. Okay, they're not happy. They're not satisfied. They're not enjoying the relationship. They're not enjoying the commitment with that person. So it's important that even when you do get married, you won't feel like a wife. Let me say that. So even if you do marry this person that we both know is not good for you, you won't feel like a wife. You will just feel like you will still feel like a girlfriend. You will still feel like a placeholder, because you will know that this isn't the right man for you. whether because he doesn't treat you well or you aren't particularly interested or attracted to him, you won't be able to enjoy the marriage. And this will go on for years. Okay. There's no I will be very honest with you guys. There's no prayer points that is going to change that. I'm just going to keep it very real, because some of you, you've tried it and it's not working. So that's just the truth. You want to make sure that you're entering a marriage that you are actually excited about, and you're dating somebody that is excited to marry you. Those are the basic requirements. So if you're always a girlfriend, never a wife, these are just some of the reasons I thought I'd share. If you have any questions for me and you're watching this live, drop it in the question box. But yeah, if these are the experiences you've been having, then you definitely need to change the way you date. Because if you actually want to get into a marriage that you're excited about and commit somebody that's excited about you as well, you want to be dating in a way that actually produces that result. So when we work together one-on-one in my Dating to Married program, this is the work I do with you. This is how I've helped my clients to go from single to married in a year, by completely changing their patterns in the way they date. Patterns are just things that you repeat. So a lot of you have patterns that I've mentioned in this call. Or rather, sorry, I said call. I'm thinking like when I'm in my coaching sessions, in this live. So a lot of you have patterns that you've just repeated and repeated and repeated, and it's not going to produce a different result. It just won't, because 2 plus 2, like I always say, will never not equal 4. It will always be 4. If you go to the ends of the earth, do the equation in another 5 years, you will always get 4. So if you keep repeating the same pattern, you're going to get the same result. You will always get the same result. So part of the work I do with you when we work together is breaking out of your patterns by evaluating the way you've dated, so that we can make sure that you're positioning, in other words, you're being visible to the kind of men you can actually commit to and you're excited about, so that you can step into marriage that God has called you into. That's the work we do together when we work together one-on-one. If you want to work with me, just click the link here if you're watching live to apply, or click the link in my bio and first tab, and we'll get started on getting you from single to married in a year. Okay? So I don't see any questions. I'm going to go now. I look forward to receiving your applications. If you're the right fit, we'll hop on a call and I'll give you a simple plan that we'll work together on for 6 months to get you married in a year. Okay, I'll talk to you all again soon. Make sure to share this with a sister friend, by the way. I'm very sure she will find this helpful. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.